Would he ever even think about ever playing any other game for the rest of his life because video games aren't real? In the bottom left of Data C, we have the red Protoss player. He is Neeb.
And spawning over in the top right as our blue Terran, representing the Cranky Ducklings, it is Vindicta. I do hope Vindicta can bring it this season, because if he is vying for, what was it, top 2 in this group? Or was that top 2 overall? Top 2 in the group, right?
Yeah, I assume as such, I think.
Because if it was vying for top 2 all of a sudden in the whole thing, I'd be like, holy crap, that's a bit of an overshoot out of nowhere. But like, if he is feeling it, then that's cool, because a lot of these young guns, especially the Terrans in NA, I felt it for a while that some of them could be really good. Like, I think Epic has been proving, at least the last few seasons, that he's pretty damn solid. I think Future had his run a few years ago as well, where it's like, oh, there's actually a Terran to look out for in the NA scene. But if Vindicta, because he's still very young, he's like, what, 21 something? He's still absolutely, if he wants to, got a future here. And I just want to see it begin. And so far, he's opting for a double gas setup, the Reaper. This can always make the Protoss feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it feels like there's definitely some ways that you're thinking about what kind of attacks could I get hit with and all that jazz. But I think since you're against Neeb, I feel like we can just write off getting proxied for the most part. So he's probably got something slick up his sleeve as that factory boots up. He's not doing a quick, I guess he is pulling some off of the gas. So maybe he really does just not want to leave anything on the table as that Reaper goes to look for the probe and may not find it. But I agree with you. I got really hyped up. I was big on the Estrella train for the last few years, and he came up and he was strong, and we got to see him make great plays and some of the tournaments, but also even like the last time we got to do that War Chest League, which was obviously really awesome. So I'm with you. I just want to be able to see more players compete and show their stuff and keep it a little bit more even. He's going to Reaper nade himself in to make sure that he can get the scouts and get to work on those probes. Always a little cheeky move.
That was a cheeky move, and it was a good way of doing it too. Neeb, very fortunately for him, did have his Stalker finishing in the nick of time there, because very often, say if you have a unit elsewhere, and it's like, oh damn, there's a Reaper in my base, and obviously didn't expect it to get through there, but everything that Vindicta is doing so far, exceedingly safe. Like CC on the high ground, this is very reminiscent of how we saw Hero Marine recently dealing with his TVPs. It was just double gas opening against Skillus. I believe it was Skillus or Mana in the groups. Either way, doing exactly this. So it's a nice, safe way to just get yourself into a game, which shows Terran confidence to me.
Yeah, right. If he's doing his just regular straight up thing, it says that he's not overthinking it and like, oh, I'm going to be really greedy against Neeb, because we know that one of the strongest things about him, and I think what really brought Neeb to that top spot way back when, was that he had that killer instinct, and you would see it where the Zerg players would try to be greedy, and especially because at the time when he was rising up, was all about, right? Someone had, we've got Cyril and Raynor and all these guys, or I guess it was maybe a little bit before Raynor had reached his peak, but he had Hydra in his WCS matches, so we got to see a lot of that where he would try to be greedy but always knew when to go for it. He had that killer instinct. We don't see the killer instinct in a lot of NA players. Usually if they're aggressive, it's just because they go, they just go all in basically every single game. A lot of them do. And having that variance, that ability to dial it back when necessary, has always been one of his strengths. And Vindicta's rolling up now. He's going to be doing a little medevac tank Liberator reinforcement on this 2-base attack as the rest of his bio reaches the front of the natural.
Fun build. Like, this can absolutely catch Protoss off guard, and at the very least, you put them in an awkward position trying to take a third base, right? And I mean, the hallucination only spotted a Widow Mine, it blew up, and right now, for Neeb, it is awkward. Like, this is very awkward. Where's his shield battery? He is putting one up extra, but now the tank arrives, a couple of SCVs arrive as well. Did lose a Widow Mine for his trouble. Nice micro by Neeb.
And with this setup, it's just so awkward because he hits them so very quickly. And the Stalkers are going to blink down the ramp like he's going for a surround, but just tries to YOLO dive the siege tank. Very, very interesting set of choices being made. I mean, Neeb does get away with most of the Stalkers. A lot of them died to the tank, but I guess he thought as long as the tank itself isn't there, the contain is rather easy for me to bust out of. And he's just going to go start his third Nexus up. I almost feel like he just pushed him aside. He's like, what are you doing? And he's like kind of pushed his shoulder and just knocked him over.
Yeah, he definitely didn't want any of that on his front door, did he? And he was just like, hey, you're not meant to be here, and I'll show you why. And even though it was kind of a scary push, he just showcased why he shouldn't be there at that moment. But the game isn't over just yet. But I am scared for Vindicta because I think he wanted a lot more out of that. Now he sees this Liberator in pretty good time. Stalker's already here. That's quite a lot of Stalkers already here. Nice focus fire on the pros, though, with the Liberator.
Yeah, and it gets a couple of probes there anyway. Charge comes up. So he's thinking about the siege tanks. We know that the charge lots, they get on top of the Marines who bait that splash damage. Obviously, they go very well with the Stalkers. We see a lot of times Protoss tries to get that third pretty quickly, and then it turns into like, okay, we're going to push the Terran when they go for their third. But the way that Vindicta is playing this out, he seems to want to be as aggressive as he can. His Stim and Combat Shield are still on the way, but he loads up the drop, and we haven't seen the inklings of a third command center. He's just spending every resource as fast as he gets it without taking that next step.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to go for a third base at this point, it's kind of, I don't know. I almost see him setting up for an SCV pull at this moment. But he's doing a big Gabe drop. Like, that drop that's going around the whole map went straight to the corner. That's a big Gabe special, man. And if that does get to the main base, it could get a bit spicy because there is a lot of potential that a Protoss might attack you, then the drop lands, and it's like, oh, where do I warp in? And then you get cleaned up on both sides. But Neeb is so comfortable in his 3-base setup. I don't think that's at all ever going to be a problem. And you see him, he's just zooming ahead, getting out units, getting up tech. And Vindicta is making a move out, but it is a scary army, but you got a long way to cross the map.
Yeah, and Vindicta, by the way, building his third CC, and I don't know if this is like the most tucked back spot that exists on this map, but definitely somewhat safe as the pile's going to push the Stalkers away from that ramp. He does have the watchtower, Neeb does, so he sees everything that's coming over. And I mean, he's had a lot of time to get this ready. So Photon Cannon kind of sidestepped on the main base by the Stim Marines. They could do a lot of damage here. There's a massive army waiting for Vindicta to try to push over towards this third. The tanks are not siege. Stalkers blink directly onto them, saying, you will not have any opportunity to siege my base. And I mean, he just completely bowls Vindicta over now, very much so on the retreat back over towards that third base location.
Yeah, I mean, that drop in the main base, that was pretty much the one thing that did damage here, because this push, this wasn't it, Nate. It wasn't it at all. Like, trying to be sneaky, he's trying to be nice right now with the micro, but he's just losing way more. And this game, almost, I mean, it's pretty much over at this point. Look at that. Neeb is just feisty, and he's looking for more, and he's getting more.
Yeah, and where do you go from here? How does he secure a third base when Neeb's got this economic advantage? He's got all these units ripping and tearing his forces to pieces. Force fields the ramp, and GG's called. Neeb takes game number 1. And that right there, that's like quintessential Neeb. You know, he got kind of presented with an interesting challenge in terms of that early attack. Not something that you typically, that you would necessarily see in that exact way every game. But he's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm just putting my Stalkers down the ramp, and I'm just going to YOLO it and clean it up. No big deal.
I was actually a little bit worried for Neeb when he first blinked in, kind of thing, or at least like when he blinked out of his base, because quite a few of those Stalkers weren't healthy, and I was like, oh no, this could be a disaster. But cleaning up that first initial Widowmine definitely helped, and kind of locking onto where the other one was, because if you try and take that out and you get the repairs going with the SCVs on that tank and it doesn't happen, he could have lost the game. But he knew exactly what he was doing, and even though Vindicta tried to throw a few little timings at him, which I think is really smart by Vindicta, because I do think the longer these games go against Neeb, the more chance Neeb has of getting back into them, or just kind of rolling away with them. So the fact that he's going for these little cute timings and a little bit weird as well, I do think it is a good way to go about it. Just has to it's kind of what I talked about earlier, and I can't help but feel it every time that I watch Vindicta. Sometimes normal is normal for a reason. Like, if you want to do some of these little timings, there are more popular ones that are maybe a little bit stronger.
Yeah, because we got to go back to the way that it began too. Is he was like, I'm going to go barracks, double gas, factory, pull SCVs off of gas, expand, but then make this into like just it was pretty much felt like a one base timing that he was going for with that first attack. Just a single liberator, everything else, and the liberator not actually really being able to support that push too hurts a lot, because if you can cover that tank and the stalkers all die, well then it turns around the other way very quickly, right? And all of a sudden you've got Widow Mine supporting the tank, and it's impossible to kind of punch through that, and that's just not what ended up happening. So now we go to Tropical Sacrifice for game 2, and I still expect Vindicta to continue to be aggressive. I don't know if it'll be in the same way, but if you're Neeb and you just played a game like that, yeah, do your thing, try to scout, be aware of what's happening, make adjustments where necessary, but I don't really see any reason for Neeb to all of a sudden throw everything away or risk it all. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, totally with you. This will be Tropical Sacrifice here. And spawning over in the bottom left-hand side, representing on-site tactics, it is Neeb.
And his opponent, spawning in the northeast as the blue Terran player. Nice little cute little duckling. He's Vindicta.
Neeb's a difficult one, man. Like, I've had so many bouts with Neeb throughout the years, and there's one thing that he never really falters on. It's the fact that he's just solid and consistent. I know when he was on the climb to getting really damn good, he made some of those tweets where it's like, I don't know why people hype me up. I'm not that good. And it's like, Neeb, you just had a bad series or whatever, you know. But he's been pretty damn rock solid. Like the best NA player of all time at this point, I'd say.
Yeah.
And it just makes him... He's scary. He's scary because I think right now he's like top 5 or top 4 on the EU ladder, which just goes to show that he's in pretty damn good shape overall. And all Europeans have always said, like, as far as practice goes, Neeb is a great practice partner.
And that's not surprising in the least. And you know, Neeb's story, the story of his career is interesting because it was right before we had like the Cyril and the Raynor takeover of basically StarCraft in its entirety. But he had that legendary run where he picked up, let's say, I think it was like 3 of the tournaments or something ridiculous. He picked up all the big WCS championships that we were doing for 1 year, and then couldn't quite deliver on the final stretch when we got to BlizzCon that year, whatever our world championship was. And then immediately after that, Cyril's like, I'll do you one better. I'm going to win every tournament this year and then win the world championship. And suddenly it was like, but I won a bunch of stuff, and I got, you know, I was the first non-Korean to win something that mattered in Korea, like basically ever. And, you know, it kind of got quickly passed over just because that European scene just got so competitive so quickly at the top level, and then Raynor followed that up shortly. But Neeb he's always been there, competing, you know, duking it out as best he can with everybody else. But it's been a little bit more of a shaky time since that meteoric rise, but very consistently at the top of the European ladder. And I think he's pretty much exclusively played there for a long time, based out of the East Coast US. Ping, not so bad.
No, yeah. If Cyril never existed, who knows? Maybe Neeb would have been still called the greatest foreigner of all time, because in my eyes, there was like different eras. Yet Stefano, absolutely, he has to be called the first greatest foreigner. Then you had like the rise of a few others that were pretty damn solid, such as Snoot and stuff. But then Neeb came along, and he really kind of, you know, he set the record straight. 3 WCS titles out of the 4. I think he lost 1 to a laser, maybe.
Yeah.
Then that Kesper Cup, where he actually went over to Korea and beat everybody.
He beat all the best Korean players on his way to the dub. It was dope.
Yeah, he smashed Trap 4-0 in the final. It was like, mate, you're not on Neeb's level. And Neeb invented his own style doing it. It was like, holy crap, America. Like, after America being like a kind of a meme nation in a lot of competitive...
in every imaginable way, yes.
Yeah, in a lot of... but he just made it happen. By the way, this is damn scary. This random little hit squad here. A few Reapers and...
I like this so much. We saw this a little bit earlier, actually. I think this was in one of our European TVPs this last week. Does get caught there on the ramp. The Hellion could have done a lot more with that if he hadn't been grabbed, but it is tough. Like the Stalker skating a little bit off the nade boop. But this reminds me a lot about like what this matchup revolves around early on, and it's keeping the probe count down as much as you can, because that Nexus is always going to be done a little bit faster. You got to take a little time to get the mules going. But if you can kill the probes and get closer to that worker count, then things get so much easier. But Neeb has still managed to do that thing he's supposed to. 38 probes, 28 SCVs. Mules kind of bring it back, but Neeb is in a prime position to take that third base and move into his Blink Stalkers again.
It was a matchup that we saw last week of Clem versus Art. I think it was the map where you have like a third base in your back. It completely skipped my mind, but yeah, it was definitely Clem versus Art, and he killed like 10 probes or something with that kind of opening, which was insane. Art did a Blink Stalker counter, did a lot of damage actually, so maybe that's what Neeb has in store for Vindicta, because you do have to be very careful when you put that much that much bang into doing a little bit of damage, especially when you only got 4 probes out of it.
It's a decent bit of gas to spend early on killing a few workers. I think you're 100% spot on. If he had gotten a few more out of it this game, then things would look a lot better. But that hallucinated Phoenix, you've got just so much space to cover with one siege tank. So kind of in the edge of the production in the main, but these guys can skate around. They can go over towards the top if they want. He has the blink. So it's really all about how will he play the siege tank, because the siege tank can also just try to zone him away from the ramp. And I think that's kind of what he's doing right now. It does get 2 of the Stalkers for a depot and a few Marines.
I think that whole situation was a little bit sloppy, but Neeb was dealing with something on his side of the map. I think it was a rave. In fact, what was on his side of the map? Because he lost a couple of probes here.
He lost 2. He lost 2 probes.
Is it a Widowmine? Let's have a look. Like what did actually go down?
He lost a Widowmine. So he's lost a Widowmine, 4 Marines, 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions. So it was probably mine.
Yeah, very often it can look a little bit like, oh, this doesn't look like they're paying full attention to this, and it's because they're not. Multiple things are happening all at the same time. So Vindicta, nice little bit of mine harass. Neeb obviously cleaned it up, only losing a couple of probes. But Neeb's on 3 bases, and Vindicta, look at that, 15 workers behind. No matter how good mules are, no matter how good Roddy tries to tell you that they're insanely broken and all that jazz, or just insanely good, the progress is definitely ahead here.
Yeah, he's pulling in about 800 more minerals a minute. As this auto turret comes down, though, that is going to help turn it around a little bit. Gets a probe or 2 now in the natural as well. So forcing a big probe pull like this is going to be a little bit nice. But again, TVP, a lot of it past this point, there's no third command center being built. He's about to start it, but we kind of know with the way he set himself up, like, does he really just want to turtle and just wait for the third and try to use everything to grab that? I feel like we might still see Vindicta try to move out now that his stim and combat shield are finishing.
Yeah, very possibly. Like that's your kind of like timing window. Neeb has just done so much with just so little, like on the front line. He's just done a lot of damage, and that Raven is nicely set up between a few bases here. It's going to be hard to deal with that. You might be like, hey, why doesn't the Pro just throw up a Stargate and then make a Phoenix or something? It's not worth it, because anytime that you do that, if your Terran opponent just moves out and pushes you, and you spent that much to deal with that one Raven that can still just run out and drop a few turrets or whatever, you could potentially die to the push. But yeah, Neeb's setting himself up very nicely here, going for the Robo Bay and everything like that. And his army, honestly, it's a pretty scary army to move out against. It's very quick.
Yeah, and he's got a lot to worry about, because I think this is one of the strengths of the way that Neeb played the last game too, is he's just all that dive potential. And you know that with the number of tanks that are on the field, either he's not going to bring them with him and his bio will just be weaker in general, or he brings them and they become a liability with all the charged zealots. And the only thing that's really working for Vindicta, as you pointed out, is the Raven kind of you have to keep some stalkers back, but it's not like his whole army. And Neeb almost just running straight into the middle of him there by that ramp. Scan, he's going to see it all.
No observer in the mix. So the Widowmines, nice use of hallucination here to try and bait the Widowmine shots. And he's still looking for it, but, okay, that was close. That was close. I like the attempt, Neeb. I like the attempt. I think Neeb should realize that army right now with the Widowmines is actually very good against his, especially just like the brute force of it, and the fact that Neeb doesn't have AoE yet. He's got 2 or a second Robo on the way, and right now he's just posturing. I don't think he wants to take the fight, but he's pretending he's stronger than he is. Very smart play.
Yeah, Neeb showing a lot of respect here and just saying, okay, well, maybe getting the third's not that easy. I will just take my 4th going to double robo. And I really love this. It's not just a transition into like that splash tech that you're talking about. He goes double robo, double Colossus production. So he can make that switch in a really, really efficient way where he's going to have a lot of powerful units very soon. On the other side of things, Vindicta has a couple of Vikings patrolling for a Prism outside of his main base. So he does already have some anti-air capabilities. He's building more Vikings, and he's also getting the enhanced shockwave upgrade for his ghosts.
Ghosts are beautiful. Oh, what a marine. I mean, that's a great scout. You not only see the warp prism, but you see what went into it. But yeah, those Colossus, it's double forged, by the way. I totally missed that. He's getting double tier 2 upgrades here, which is huge. It's going to be a lot of Colossus out. Luckily, Vindicta is getting out a lot of Vikings as well. That Raven's still alive. In fact, where did it end up going to? Because that Raven, it made it all the way back home. Cheeky boy.
I think he finally got the observer that was inside of his main there as well. So denying a bit more information from Neeb, but he's got 3 Colossi. Having that ability to get all these units out is really nice. Liberator, though, sieging up on the 3rd base. Not a quick response, so a few probes will get popped before the Stalkers blink up to knock it down. And this is still going to be a lot to deal with. There's only 4 Vikings on the map. He's got a few more in production, but 3 Colossi is a lot of damage. Even if the Vikings are all able to get pretty easy shots, that's still going to be tough. These Widow Mines, though, are a bit awkward. He does not have an observer. So with the armory, they're not going to reveal themselves when they pop off.
No, they're not. And those ghosts, EMP, will be huge. The tanks also can come into pretty good play here. Like, Vindicta's setup, as far as things go, pretty damn solid. And yeah, Neeb, I don't think he likes this situation, even though, don't get me wrong, he's ahead. All it takes is for one drop to get out on the map and then cause havoc at a base because he can no longer warp in. And that's exactly what Vindicta is going for. But this is the moment where it's like, oh gosh, he has to stay alive. Oh, poor Widow Mines.
Yeah, to be able to get 2 of them with 1 shot there off the disruptors. And exactly like you were saying, we have 2 drops moving out. Will they be spotted? I think he's about to go in the range of that warp prism, so he'll be able to kill it. But at the same time, Neeb will be aware, okay, well, that southeast base, that's something I need to make a choice. Am I going to be reinforcing that position, or do I just bring everything back? So those Terrans, they can be quite difficult to get your hands around those medevacs. And he just pocketed them in the corner of the map, too. So this actually creates a bit of space for Vindicta to be able to land that 4th. And I think if he gets this 4th and can planetary it or completely lock it down without much trouble, then maybe things open up a little bit for him, but he's going to need to add on an additional starport, I think, too, for the amount of air that he's going to need. Big EMPs land across the army, but the command center is forced up. There is an interference matrix on one of the Colossi. Disruptor takes a huge chunk of bio out, though.
Certainly does. That drop is heading for the main base. It was shot already, just a chunk there. Oh, Stalkers in the main to greet them, and these Stalkers right now are better upgraded, but having a few Marauders in the mix, in fact, just 1 remains. It's going to be a decent cleanup from Neeb. And look at the supply. Like, he's so far ahead at this point, and he's rich. Like, his mineral count is huge.
Yeah, you really don't want to let that 4th base get set up because he's got all the money in the world. That 4th base, at least for Neeb, is only mining minerals. The 5th base is only mining minerals. He's leaning heavily on using those zealots against him, using the potential of the Widow Mine shots against him, creating that buffer for the Colossi and for the disruptors to just let it all rip.
I mean, Vindicta, he's struggling to get onto 4 bases right now, whereas Neeb, he's free to go up to 6 bases. The Vikings, they are eventually going to take out these Colossus. That is nice, but there's so much Protoss here and pure raw power. Even if Neeb takes kind of inefficient trades, he can reinforce so fast. And also, with anything that he wants.
That gets another shot out. The planetary has managed to finish morphing, though. So Vindicta, he's picking up some money. That Demuslim, I think what we've kind of been alluding to with the economy situation is Vindicta has finally taken this base, but at a pretty steep price. He has not been able to get as close to maxing out as I think he wants compared to Neeb. But one thing that I will say is he's got 3-3 on the way, so he's done a really good job with his upgrades.
Oh, absolutely. Like, Vindicta's macro, like, his mineral count's been low the whole time he's been spending it. It's just, he's reaching a stage of the game that I really don't think Terrans want to be in, which is trying to take a 5th base beyond this, trying to deal with the DTs and the, oh my god, that blink is messy. But Neeb's going to go for it.
I mean, whether this works or not, this is an absolute YOLO tier play. He says, look, it's not a planetary. I know your army's hurting. Big disruptor shots landing. He eats a couple of EMPs, but now with this setup, he's knocked the economic side of things back into just complete disarray for Vindicta as he makes another counterattack towards that southern base. The Zealot Warping cleans it up, and Neeb secures the 2-0.